Welcome back. And so as we go into our next conversation, let's just, walk down a bit memory lane. 2023 was a defining year for Nigeria in terms of political participation, especially from the youth voting bloc, where we saw the emergence of a movement that rallied behind the presidential candidate of the Labour Party. Of course, all this happened prior to his defection to the Labour Party. And so we've seen, that movement, staying strong and holding space, particularly on the online space. And over the weekend, you would have seen, a trend. Peter Obi is coming back. But of course, there are some variations to what particularly happened in understanding and perception of what particularly happened, during the 2023 presidential election, as far as engagement is concerned with different blocs, or the Southwest bloc. So we're going to explore all of the sides to that conversation. And joining us this morning to have that conversation is Mr. Aki Olaoye. He's popularly known as Aki Tollgate. He's an entrepreneur and founder, Sunglasses Baron, and founder
House of the Net.
House of the Net. He joins us right here in our Lagos studio. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Olaoye. We also have joining us this morning, Chairman Media Team, Labour Party Governorship Campaign Council, Edo 2024, and member of the Obedient Movement, Mr. Idris Zakari. Good morning, Mr. Idris.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, Mr. Zakari joins us virtually. But I'm going to start here in the studio with Mr. Aki Olaoye. Before we go into politics and all of the interesting bits and pieces of it,
sure.
You just returned from the Ojioa festival. Of course, we're going to be bringing you all of the high points later on the show in terms of the pictures and the videos, so we'll enjoy all of it. But there is an emerging support base now from the youth as they participate and engage with the Ojioa. Unlike what we saw with the youth groups in that festival, what do you think is responsible? Is it Farouk or Reagba?
So I think, so first of all, Ojioa was spectacular. Big kudos to the organizing team, state government. I have to give them credit. I think the underlying factor behind the new interest and excitement around Ojioa is the fact that I think Nigerians have just decided to embrace our own. Back in the day, you have people wanting to travel to London for Nottingham, a carnival, traveling to Brazil for carnival, or perhaps Jamaica. But I think obviously you look at, the cost of things, obviously inflation, spending power. People decide to look inwards, and I think Ojioa emerged at the right moment. Obviously, Farouk's story with, beating cancer, I would say, electric and really exciting optics from last year's festival sparked the interest, and obviously social media. I think a lot of local content creators, a lot of influencers just decided to, embrace it, make it their own, not even waiting for, government patronage, maybe somebody sponsoring from a corporation. But I think when you have that kind of local energy, it really just creates a spark. And this year was fantastic.
Yeah, fantastic. Politics now. What informed your reflections from, your engagement over the weekend about how the toxic behavior of some members of your movement affected a voting bloc in the Southwest in the 2023 presidential election?
Sure. So I would not ascribe a label to the Obedient Movement using the word toxic only. I mean, it's a widespread issue. I have to be very sincere. Looking at elections from 2011 to 2015 is where we saw that new emergence of aggressiveness, toxicity. 2020 was obviously, a very hot election cycle. I always tell people elections are over. Time to, obviously look out for governance and, hold our leaders accountable. But just going back to your question, for me, I've always promoted civility. Always making sure that people beyond politics, think of humanity first. It's okay to have friends, relatives on different political platforms or supporting political parties. But I think at the end of the day, when the chips are down, your bank account, when you write a check, you swipe your POS card, you make a purchase, it doesn't ask you for a political party. Your reality is what stares in the face. And I think when we stick to understand that we interact at that level, it equally makes it easy for people to, again, express themselves. Freedom of association is obviously enshrined in the Constitution. So if you choose to be an APC member, or support PDP or obedient, I'd say live and let live. So what you found with the toxic conversations and attitudes, mostly online, Twitter, if I'll be very sincere, is the fact that you equally have anonymity, right? Where I can create a handle, I can tweet from a bedroom in, Southwest Jalingo or, Uganda and claim I'm XYZ. That's equally fuel the fire. But then again, let me be honest. There are equally people with names and faces that have not been responsible. And I think for me, really just making sure that we can curb that has been sort of an objective.
So before we bring in Zachary, is this a question of some members of the obedient? I know you don't want to use the word toxic, but let's use it for purpose of context because you use that word in your tweet, in that sense. Is it a problem of the obedient movement or a problem of our political space? For context, we've had an election where the president's picture was put on a coffin in this country.
Yes.
I think predominantly the then opposition were now in power, according to what we saw on some of those things. We've also seen in that in the elections of the 2023, where in the governorship election, where we saw people being threatened, literally being attacked and injured. So I'm asking, is it a question of some members of the obedient movement online, or just generally a problem within our political space during election period and shortly after election period? So if you're strong on the Twitter space, you use that. If you're strong on the street, you use that. You get my drift?
So our politics is very divisive. I'll be very sincere. We have a set of transactional politicians. And I use the word transactional because I sat down and watched your previous segment where you were talking about the defection of a governor to another. If you're a young person in Nigeria, you're confused about politics. You want to look at a politician and say, you know what, perhaps this individual might have the right vision, the right ideals. Let me study his school of politics. But then you enroll for an undergraduate program in this person's school of politics, and then the next semester, they're switching party colors. And then you start asking yourself, what next? So back to your question. Our politics is so divisive that politicians obviously identify loopholes, they take advantage of, let me call it, anger or frustration, or even probably just ignorance, and use that to fuel, I would say, outcomes to the advantage. When I think of a lot of the toxic conversations that you would find, maybe Twitter, TV, whatever platforms, I think, it comes down to people being accountable, holding each other and saying, you know what, we can be better, right? If I'm giving you my regular basketballs, as we call it, during the electoral cycle, once elections are over, I'm going to sit down and say, hey, what next? But this perpetual outcome that we must continue to hate, despise, or create room for zero tolerance is one we have to do away with. The other question I always ask people, I say, you may not like politician XYZ or political party XYZ. The alternative you're offering, how are you selling the message? And that's really key. Nigerians are angry, Nigerians are frustrated. If you look at the obedient movement, as of when it emerged, you think of the cycles of movements, right? Emergence, you have coalitions, people coming around and saying, we love what's happening here. Then you had the cycle that maybe perhaps the obedient movement was really slow to come into, which is bureaucracy, having a strong structure. Today you have that, with Tanko and some of the executives, right? Let me call them that, across the regions. And then ultimately, are you able to seize power, or do you go into a phase of decline? And I think that's where the movement is yet to define, itself. I always say this to people: don't underestimate the obedient movement. Never for one day do that. You talk about Lagos elections. I told a lot of my friends in the APC, you're going to get a shellacking, and we delivered that flawless. Can you repeat that in 2027? What's the messaging here in the Southwest? PO, obviously, Peter Obi, did amazing across a number of homes. Again, I always tell people, non-Igbos, because there's this narrative that, perhaps maybe Igbos voted overwhelmingly for PO over others in Lagos. No, a lot of Southwesterners voted for Peter Obi, and if I think of the energy, the work, the effort, myself and many others put in, we love the candidate, we love the messaging, and I think we just felt that Nigeria was at this precipice where perhaps it's time for change. Let's even do away with, what I call establishment politics. For me, one thing, I didn't like the Emilokan slogan. I just felt like, politics power. You have to sell yourself to the people. Standing and saying, I'm next in line. Well, again, I can give the politician credit because he felt he was next in line. He did all of what he could do using the apparatus of our Nigerian political system. But then again, is that the kind of system we really want?
All right.
But again, a lot to say there.